getting into let's agree to agree. I've been having these conversations on a weekly basis with a man named Dr. Gray Carr. And,
Hmm.
we have a lot of conflict. Can we agree to agree? Are there things that we can agree to agree on? Is this country, can we get us to agree on something? Because I contend, Michael Steele, that most of us want the same things.
We
Most of
do.
us
I
want
agree.
safe neighborhoods. We want our children to have a great education. We want to be able to be free to live our lives. We don't really want to bother nobody. We don't want to be bothered. Can we get on the same page around those
We
issues?
are 1,000% on the same page. And there has always been, I think, in the country, this idea of that expresses exactly what you just said. Neighbor to neighbor, community to community, state to state. We're all under this banner because we choose to be, and we make it work because we believe in it. And a lot of that rests on this idea of agreeing to agree. That is what a pluralistic society is about. It's how it orients itself. It's not about we'll agree to disagree or the majority absolutely rules. It is this sense that we all give a little bit, we get a little bit, we lose a little bit, we win a little bit. And in the end, it all measures out because Karen Hunter is following her American dream. Michael Steele is following his American dream. And where they intersect, that's a beautiful thing. And where they don't, okay, see you at the next turn. And that has animated a lot of, at least philosophically, Karen. And you and I've had some pretty deep conversations over the years that go to that point. Philosophically, on paper, that's how it should play out. But the lived, actualized experience is, especially today, far from that. And it is an aggrieved population. It is a very selfish population. It is a very other than me population. And that results in a lot of the crap that you see. And what makes it worse is that in the past, we could rely on our political institutions to help navigate us through that, our political leadership, sort of figure out, how we can legislative address some of these things, civil rights legislation, voting rights legislation, for example. And we're now seeing even those things being undone. And that therein lies a big part of the problem. For some reason, I don't know why MSNBC is calling me, but
Tell them that their turn is coming.
you're right, exactly. I
Shoot,
was like,
like
what are
stop,
y'all
stop
doing?
interrupting this goodness here.
Thank
Um,
you.
I love having you on primarily because for your entire career and your adult life, you were a Republican. Like,
Still
and I
am.
think you still are, right?
Yeah,
I
still
was gonna
am.
say, but I don't know what that means, right? So can you
Yeah,
can
well, I
you
can relate
help
to that.
can you help define what it means to be a Republican today, and why are you still wedded to a party that clearly has been
Yeah.
overtaken by the unhuman?
Well, yeah, it's definitely been overtaken by white nationalism, xenophobia, anxiety about some of the things I just described, playing to a lot of the white fears that exist in suburban communities around the country, particularly among white suburban women. And the reality of it is, as I say to a lot of those friends and neighbors who live in those spaces, have you checked your kid's iPhone lately? Have you listened to the things they're talking about? Because the very things that you're afraid of, they're not. And so you have this sort of breakdown that's being promoted and pushed out by the Republican Party at this point. But here's the honest truth of that, and it is tied to a bit of history. That the party has been in this dancing space with authoritarianism and xenophobia and the like as a political weapon for quite some time. And we go back to the late 1950s when the John Birch Society tried to rear its head up inside the Republican Party. You go to Barry Goldwater, who definitively and declaratively stated that the party would not, as its nominee, bend the arc of justice toward the freedoms of African Americans and rejected the civil rights movement. You have Richard Nixon watching the implosion within the Democratic Party of white men fleeing that party because Johnson and Kennedy embraced civil rights. And Nixon decided Southern strategy calculation to dance with that vote to get power. We saw Reagan, who was one of the political leaders that I admired a lot, but was disappointed in the way he started his 1980 campaign for the presidency in the Deep South, playing to the fears of white segregationist men. And then, of course, you have what we have now in Trump and Trumpism and MAGA. And so the parties always have this conflict internally. And so the easy thing, to be honest, is to walk away from that and say, you know what? I ain't got time. Or to stay and try to fix it, which is some of what I did try to do as national chairman. Some of what I still do, because philosophically, the party's original orientation was toward individual freedoms. That is what we were founded on. The idea that all of us are created equal under this Constitution. That was Lincoln. That was Frederick Douglass. That was the founding of the party in 1864 and 1854, excuse me. And so the reality is, one, for me at least, that orientation as a Black man, knowing that's the political home that I come out of politically, and also the fight for that individual right and those freedoms. So I stay in to hold that mirror up to say, this is who we once were. So why are you showing your behind?
Is it working on? And let me say this. You know this. I'm not a political ideologue. I do not ascribe to.
Never have been, by the way.
No, because parties wax and wax. You know, the Democrats. They right now. I think it was Ben Carson coming out. It was the Democrats that wanted slavery. It was the Democrats that had Jim Crow. Yes, but the Democrats are not the Democrats, and the Republicans are not the Southern strategy. The gaslighting and the misinformation is just too vast.
Yeah.
For me to lean into a party, because the ideals change depending on the leadership. So I'm going to ask this question to you and everyone listening. Why this party? Why not lean into the ideals and then find candidates that ascribe to them in whatever region you're in? If it's gerrymandered, run as a Republican. If it's not, if you have a chance to win as a Democrat, run as a Democrat. Why are we so wedded to this party thing to our detriment, I believe? But
you actually raise an excellent point, and it is one that has its root, the question you ask, and the answer as well is rooted in the founders. The founders were very much concerned about this new republic embracing the idea of political parties. At that time, they called them factions. And around those same reasons today that you would have concerns about joining these parties, because, as you noted, philosophies change, points of view change, and they change because of lived experiences. As the country grows, as its population changes, as immigrants come in, others leave, as migrants move from one part of the country to the other, the realities of the communities change. So you want the idea of this land we were founded on was to say, hey, in this space, you can find the fullest expression of those values, those ideas. Again, sounds good on paper. The lived reality, though, is somewhat different. Slavery, stripping the land from the natives who owned it first. All those things are actions that you would think would undermine and weaken the idea of this nation. But I think the strength has always been when we lean back to those words, even though they were written by white men who owned slaves. We now today can embrace those words. And one of the concerns they had that George Washington in particular expressed about having political parties was those words themselves would become weakened. And they would mean less because they would be then subject to the wiles and whims of the political party. And that's what we see playing out to this day. And which is why I've always been a strong advocate for more political players in the mix to dissipate the concentration of power into two parties. Because when you have two parties at the end, and I ask this question in speeches I give around the country. I just did this a couple of weeks ago in Pennsylvania to a very mixed audience, both ethnically and politically. And I asked the question, how many people here believe that both the Republican and the Democratic parties want every registered voter to vote? Not one hand in the room went up. Not one. So people understand that the political parties aren't interested in everybody voting. So the follow-up question was, well, how many here believe that they want only their voters to vote? And then every hand went up. And it kind of gives you a sense that we understand what's going on around us. Part of the frustration I think a lot of us feel, particularly even within the Republican Party, those who stay and fight that particular battle, is that we wish more and more people would speak to that truth and recognize that truth and begin to change the system by expanding the franchise and expanding the opportunity to access that franchise in a multiple of ways.